Welcome everyone to the third presentation in the Sacred Work of Love series. What I'm going to focus on, my primary focus in the Sacred Work of Love, will be talking about a spiritual approach to healing one's relationship. The approach will help people struggling with a distressed marriage turn things around. The approach will help an individual trying to navigate the wounds of a spouse that presents itself in the form of manipulative or relationship destructive behavior, hurtful words. The approach will help the motivated spouse trying to improve the relationship turn those interactions around from ones that are destructive to ones that are constructive. But I know my audience, and I'm talking to people that I have so much respect for, and I value so deeply. People that have made the choice, born far from the truths, from the insight, from the wisdom of Torah, and that have made the choice to allow their lives to be illuminated by the wisdom of Torah. So I'm going to take advantage of that and deviate in some ways from my goal, from my primary focus, to punctuate these classes with other insights that are customized, that are shaped and inspired by my respect and value for you. So I want to take a moment to speak about the Jewish people as the chosen people. I think there's a lot of confusion about that, especially in today's times. So we're the chosen people. We're God's chosen people. Does that mean we're racist? One can say, well, if we were racist, it's funny because the Jewish people seems to be more than one race. If you go to Israel, you'll see a whole spectrum of color. Are we supremacists? Are we exclusivists? And I think that some of the confusion is because people are using the word chosen like the rest of the world uses it. But Judaism is a series of paradigm shifts. The exceptional nature of Judaism is that it seems to be different than its time, ahead of its time, and always shifting the paradigm. You see, the Aryans were the master race, but their concept was that being Aryan by definition made you better. And the rest of the world could be taken advantage of or enslaved to serve them. The Torah is different. Rav Hirsch, who I've learned so much from, of blessed memory, through his writings. I never had the privileged opportunity to meet him, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, an incredible thinker, says that the word for leader in Lashon HaKodesh, in the language of the Bible, is a nasi. Even today in modern Hebrew, the president of the state of Israel is called a Nasi. Yet, that word is also used to connotate clouds. And he says, if you look at a cloud is higher. It's better than. It's in a more exalted position. But it doesn't use its position to serve itself. Rather, it uses its position to sprinkle down on those that are beneath it, to fructify those that are lower than it with life-giving water. That's the paradigm shift. If the Jewish people are chosen, we're chosen for a mission, and the Torah, the Bible, the Nevi'im, the Kesuvim couldn't be more clear about it. We're not chosen to live high on the hog. Quite not. That's why we're in the Galut. That's why we're in the diaspora. We're not chosen to twiddle our thumbs. We're chosen to be a light unto the nations, to share the light that was given to us, that was bestowed to us by our forefathers at great sacrifice with the world at large. That's what we're chosen for, and that's what God holds us accountable to. What made me think of this is because I try to start with a thought from the Parsha, from the Torah portion that's read in all the synagogues, the Torah portion of the week. I just saw I believe the president, the prime minister of Argentina, Milei, he actually quoted from the Torah portion of the week in Davos today. Said some fascinating things discussing the 10 plagues. But the Jewish people are introduced to Paro as Hashem's firstborn. And that's why Hashem smote the firstborn of the Egyptians, because Paro did not release Hashem's firstborn, the Jewish people. But clearly, says Rav Hirsch, in that manner of phrasing who the Jewish people are to the Pharaoh, B'ni B'chori Yisrael, my firstborn son Israel, it couldn't be more clear that, number one, the rest of the nations of the world are God's children. At times people have asked me why I don't believe that Jesus was the Son of God. I say I actually do. I believe he was the Son of God. But I believe we're all God's children. There's no human being that's more godly than another. We're all capable. If you, me, we, if you're a real human being, you're a human being that bleeds, that suffers and strives, that has temptations, then you're a human being. And you're not better or worse than others except by virtue of your actions, by virtue of your choices. Because if one particular human being is godly or godlier than the others just by his or her being born, well, if that human being is a white, I guess it means whites are more closer to what the ideal should be. If that human being is a male, I guess that's more closer to what human beings should be, because look at that male. That male was godlier, not by his actions or her actions, by merit, but by birth. I always find it interesting that the pictures you see of Jesus are all white male, as if he was a European. But you understand why they would do that, because otherwise it makes them look maybe a little bit imperfect. If Jesus was dark and they're not dark, or Middle Eastern and they're not Middle Eastern, well, that's not good. So the point is that the Jewish people are God's firstborn. And as a result of that, they have obligations, more obligations. Wherever we see God choosing a person, we see God being stricter with that person. We see that person having more obligation towards those under him. Like, for example, even in the Jewish people, God chose the Levite nation. And even in the Levites, God chose the priests. But the Levites and the priests have extra commandments. They have extra obligations. And the word priest, says Rav Hirsch, is Kohen, which comes from, in Lashon HaKodesh, is Kohen, in the language of the Torah, the holy, the sacred tongue. And Kohen means to direct. It's similar to the word kivein, direction. Kavanah. Kavanah means to direct your attention towards God when you're praying. So we're talking about relationships here. That's my primary focus. But a relationship is one of those things. If we're talking about a marriage, if we're talking about a long-term relationship, the ideal relationship that God designed for human beings in the Torah, the male and female long-term relationship exclusive, where God says pretty early on, Al Kain Yazov Ishas Ava V'imo, a man will leave the home of his father and mother, V'yidbach B'ishto, and cleave to his wife, and they'll be one. That chain of husband and wife is as strong as the strongest link. The one that decides to be the Bechar, to take the lead, to take the initiative, the one that decides to be the agent of change, has the power to do so. And God will help you if you try. But some guidance is needed. And that's what this is about. So we left off where I spoke about 8 mental health conditions which are prevalent in distressed marriages. And I like calling what we're doing right now, what I've been doing the last 2 weeks, the path of reflection. The program that I have is called Sunrise, Relationship Healing Program, Sunrise. And that the Sunrise approach consists of 11 actually paths. 11 paths. And I would say 3 stages. So 3 stages and 11 paths. The first stage is laying the foundation. If your marriage is distressed, or even if you're not satisfied with the closeness, with the intimacy, with the warmth, with the vibe with the atmosphere, with the environment that's manifesting in your relationship, you can be the Bukhar. You can be God's firstborn in that relationship. You can bring light into that relationship. And Sunrise offers an approach to doing so. 3 stages, 11 paths. The first stage is laying the foundation. To lay the foundation for lasting, positive relationship change. And laying the foundation has to begin with a little bit of reflective work. The Sunrise approach is permeated with reflective work. But the first path of 3 paths in stage 1, in laying the foundation, the first path is called the path of reflection. And in that path, you're reflecting. What is the vibe in my relationship? What is the temperature, the pulse of my relationship? And we discussed 2 weeks ago, if your relationship is distressed, it might be antagonistic. It might be cold. It might be cycling between antagonistic and cold, and ultimately in a vicious cycle of regression that you want to turn around. But that's not all you have to reflect on. What are the causes of the regression, or the challenges, or the lack of closeness? And for that, last week, we took a peek, or we took a dive, I should say, more than a peek. We took a dive into 8 types of condition that impair one's ability to relate, to be in a relationship in a healthy way. And if you're with a spouse that has one of those conditions, or traumas or emotional wounds, we discussed low self-esteem, the different types. If you're a spouse, you got your work cut out for you. If you have a spouse like that, you have your work cut out for you. But today, we need to assess, we need to evaluate one more thing. Your wounds, your triggers. Because as day follows the night and night follows the day, spouses trigger each other. When you're reacting as opposed to responding, when you're lashing out instead of reaching out, when you are withdrawing in pain, and not wanting to connect, you're likely triggered. So let's read. I know you can't see what I'm reading, but I could. A little outline that I made here. You've completed the vital work of exploring the connection challenges and possible conditions that drive your spouse's hurtful behaviors. You did this with a frame of mind, with a mindset of wanting to heal things. And as you strove to understand their wiring, you work to also recognize them as human struggles, mixed in alongside the positive qualities you like in them. But now an equally critical step awaits, turning that same gentle curiosity inward to explore your own connection challenges. It does take two to tango. And that's the key word, tango. If you find yourself lashing out, withdrawing from a place of pain, isolating within the relationship, being resentful, perseverating, agonizing, obsessing about the interactions of the relationship, then it's time. It's time to turn a gentle curiosity inward to explore your triggers. As you are the motivated spouse, you need information. You're here because you're trying to take the lead. You're trying to be the Bachar, the firstborn in this relationship, the strongest link in the chain. And it's possible that the challenges you have are pretty benign. If not for your spouse's behavior, you may not even be aware that you have those wounds, those emotional wounds. They be harmlessly buried in your subconscious memory. But in the face of your spouse's reactive behavior, at times unprovoked by you, but provoked by their particular issues, your buried wounds get exposed. And if you are not aware of what's going on, before you know it, you're slipping down the slippery slope of relationship conflict, of tit-for-tat reactions, of cynicism, sarcasm, defensiveness, or withdrawal. But this marriage is your God-given journey. So becoming an agent of change calls you to reach within. It's completely natural and deeply human to feel hurt, frustrated, or even furious when you're unjustified, when you're attacked for no good reason. But there's a part of you that's reacting to that. And if you're reacting and you begin to respond with hurtful comments of your own, no matter how justified, you unintentionally step into the vicious cycle of distance and resentment. So the road that leads to closeness begins. It's a road, takes a few paths of sunrise to get there. But the road that leads to closeness begins with identifying the wounds you carry, because that's what's getting triggered, and perhaps taking the first steps to soothing those wounds. So, this exercise, I'm going to try to send it out to you. I have Ray send it out to you or post it to my to my page on the 70 Nations, invites you to do a reflection, an important reflective journey, to go on one, before you step into that courageous role of relationship leadership. And that reflection, that reflective exercise consists of exploring reactions to hurtful behaviors, being curious and open-minded in regards to the underlying wounds that are being touched without judgment, and then reaching for the self-compassionate voice of your soul, the quiet, loving echo of Hashem's love that can soothe old fears, so that you can begin to more easily respond from a place of strength instead of pain. As you turn inwards and speak to yourself with validation, as you echo the loving voice of Hashem within you, you begin to build an inner sanctuary that we're going to expand a lot on in later paths. And this inner sanctuary will keep you centered and resilient. So I'm going to send out that exercise. And I think even just looking at it will be eye-opening. It will be insightful. But there's another exercise I'm going to send out. The path of reflection. That's what this is about. It's about reflecting on where your marriage is at. It's about reflecting on the wounds or behavioral or mental health conditions your spouse may be carrying. It's about touching with curiosity and with compassion your emotional wounds and triggers by reflecting on exchanges, on interactions you had with your spouse where they criticized you in an unjust way and you felt triggered. And of course, as you do that, compassionately soothe those triggers because they'll be touched as you're looking inwards. And I'm going to send out that reflective exercise. But then there's one more reflective exercise which wraps up the path of reflection. And that is to reflect on the strengths of your marriage and family. You're here because you still do love. You understand that love takes sacred work, but you're here because you love. You're here because you believe, you sense, you intuit that there's something precious. There's a precious and wonderful potential that can be rebuilt. A foundation that can be healed and rebuilt. So that's another journal exercise that I'm going to send out. Which is to help you touch the reasons motivating your work for change despite the hurt. Even if the answers feel faint as you do the exercise, remember they were once strong enough to build your life upon them. And as closeness returns through the work that you do, through the interventions that you learn, and the responses that you cultivate to your spouse's behavior, even when it's hurtful, even when it's out of control, as closeness returns, As you journey through the sunrise process, you may be pleasantly surprised to see those positive feelings and those original loving traits of your spouse rekindle and return. So stay tuned to your inbox, or if Ray posts it to my page on the 70 Nations for 2 reflective exercises. One will be to explore your triggers. 2 will be to explore what are the things you do love about your spouse. What are the potentials you do see in your marriage? What are the strengths and resources that you are fighting for? So that kind of ends the path of reflection. We're still in stage 1, laying the foundation. Stage 1 of the sunrise approach has 3 paths. It has the path of reflection, which we were working on the last couple of weeks. And now we're ready to begin the path of hope. The path of hope will give you an overview of the sunrise approach, and it will give you a taste, a sense of what sunrise, what you will learn, and what it can do for your marriage. Let's begin. No matter how dark it seems now, sunrise can shine a light of hope. And sunrise is built on the Jewish spiritual principles that are here to bring the light of God into all the domains of our life. I'm applying those spiritual principles to your marriage, to a relationship. And above and beyond those principles, I'm going to give you skills and techniques and strategies that are proven to de-escalate conflict, to turn interactions around, shift transactions from painful, relationship destructive to relationship constructive, to bond building instead of bond destroying. So sunrise can shine a light of hope. No matter which stages your marriage is in right now, antagonistic, cold, or even separation phase. No matter the challenges your spouse has or how he, she, or she triggers you. If there's a part of your heart that still loves your spouse and longs for the happy, peaceful family you dreamed of, then sunrise should be considered. And I imagine that that's why you're here, because there's a part of you that says, hey, I believe there's more. I believe there's a potential that life is holding us back from, but somehow we can overcome and reach that potential. There's a love we used to have. There's a love we want again to have. Sunrise, the approach, is not a magic wand. It doesn't force your spouse to change overnight. Instead, actually, to the contrary, I should say, sunrise teaches the paradox that improvement, your spouse's improving, will be accelerated. When you begin to accept some of their limitations. Now, accept doesn't mean that you surrender to them, you resign yourselves to them, or that you don't try to change them, but you accept who they are. You let go of conditional acceptance. You accept them as a package. I like saying human beings are a package deal. Sometimes we do a grab bag and we get a package. And in that package, maybe things we want and some things we don't want. Human beings are a package deal. If you could accept the package, you could still love your spouse. At the very least, not hate them, not resent them, but rather release them. Release them emotionally, release them to grow at their own pace, release them to deal with the challenges that they have. It's their challenge. Yes, it does impact you, but if you accept, if you open to the journey, it impacts you less. It still becomes their challenge, what they have to deal with. And that's a big piece of it. Give it back to them emotionally in your mind. It's their challenge. This behavior reflects them, not you. It reflects them. It's their wound. And you don't need to react to it. Let it go right through you. They own it. So Sunrise teaches the paradox that the more you accept who your spouse is, despite his or her limitations or wounds, the more likely it is for them to actually improve. Because ODD is a real thing. Oppositional defiant disorder. I think we all have a piece of it, but particularly people that are emotionally damaged, because to them, they can't differentiate, or at least they have a hard time differentiating between you want me to change a behavior, good thing, versus as opposed to you want me to change who I am, bad thing. When you ask them to change, you're not saying I want you to change who you are. I love who you are. I want you to change your behavior. I want you to change how you're talking to me. I want you to change the things you say to me. But they have a hard time hearing that. Change means I'm being rejected. So, when you accept who they are, accept their limitations, release them to deal with their wounds at their pace, at their time, between them and God. And you courageously change the person you could change most quickly, yourself. As you learn, and as we go through the paths, you will learn to soothe your reactions, to stay centered, respond with empathy, use research-based skills. Something surprising starts to happen. The tension in the relationship begins to lower, slowly but noticeably. Change with people is agriculture, not mechanical. It's agricultural. I don't know if I said this yet to you before, but if I did, it bears repeating anyway. You know, like people that are mechanical, they like say, okay, broken, take out my hammer, bam, 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 fixed. No, not how it works with people. Agriculture, you plant seeds of change. You shine the light of change by role modeling, by you being the person that you want both of you to be. And you wait patiently. You encourage, that's part of the water. You encourage, you can challenge them a bit. You can invite them to join you in this new, caring, empathic, collaborative, non-manipulative way of interacting in a way that builds the bond. But you can't pull up the shoots. How does it go? Sorry. You can't pull up the roots to see the fruits. You have to let it grow. I think that was Henry David Thoreau, I think. You can't pull up. I saw it in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You can't pull up the roots to see the fruits. So it's agricultural, not mechanical. But you'll see the green shoots. I remember as a kid, when we planted the seed in that cup, you took the cup, you put some dirt in it, you watered it, you put a lima bean, and it was so beautiful, so wondrous, so incredible to see that little green shoot coming up. You'll have the same experience in the most meaningful, perhaps most meaningful area of your life, and one of the most sacred. The word for marriage in Hebrew, at least the first part of marriage, is called kedushin, sanctification. No accident. Marriage should be a sanctuary. So you're going to plant the seeds, you're going to water them, and those green shoots might appear faster than you expect. You'll feel more peaceful within weeks. Moments of connection will return, arguments will shorten or soften. But even if not, because like Dr. Seuss, we don't say 100% guaranteed. Unfortunately, I can't even say 99.75% guaranteed, as Dr. Seuss, I believe, says. It will help. It will work. Things will grow. But some people are very wounded. And even if your spouse is deeply wounded and change on their side feels impossible or very far away, the inner work you do through Sunrise is never wasted at all. Because remember, you're following, you're internalizing, you're connecting with those spiritual principles of becoming a person of character, of becoming a person infused with soul, who's connected to the loving voice of God within. I always get so puzzled when people look at the Spirit of God as this creation or entity. It's the Spirit of God. It's closeness to your source. That's all it is. It's closeness to your source. And yeah, it's a real thing because you are a child of God. You have, so to speak, the same DNA, the spiritual DNA. You have a soul that acts as the light of God within you, of God. It's not a God or a Godhead. It's of God. At least that's how it makes sense to me as a Jew. And I believe to you as well, because you're here. You've joined the house of Jacob. You've made that courageous decision. So even if your spouse is deeply wounded, and we're going to close very shortly, and change on their side feels impossible or very far away, the inner work you do through Sunrise is never wasted. You walk taller, knowing you are becoming the strongest, most loving version of yourself, the most sacred version of yourself. The sacred work of love begins with you. And you're doing everything possible for your marriage and for all the other stakeholders, like your children. Okay, thank you so much for joining. We are already getting our feet wet here because we finished the path of reflection. Stay tuned for those reflective exercises that I'm going to send out to you, or I'm going to try to send out to you together with Ray, to reflect on your wounds and turn towards them with self-compassion, to focus on the strengths and resources, what you love about your spouse, why you're here to do the work. And we're now in the path of hope, where you're going to get an overview of what Sunrise can give you and offer you and your spouse. I will see you next week. For those of you that are in the direction of that winter storm watch, stay warm, stay dry, stay safe, and experience the awe of Hashem's creation.